All right, so you want to dive deep into managing money as a Christian couple. Smart move. We've got some seriously interesting sources here. Trust me, this is going to be way more exciting than your typical financial seminar.
Absolutely. We're not just talking about spreadsheets and budgets here. It's about something much deeper, weaving your faith into your financial decisions as a couple.
And one of these sources jumps right into a verse that really sets the tone. Haggai 2.8. It says, "The silver is mine and the gold is mine, declares the Lord Almighty."
Wow.
Makes you think, huh?
Yeah, it's a powerful statement. It makes you stop and think about what it truly means to be a steward of your finances.
So we're stewards, not owners. I
Yeah.
get that, but honestly, living that out day to day, not always easy.
Definitely not. It's a constant challenge. This source dives into the why behind that stewardship idea, arguing that, tithing isn't just a box to check off on a to-do list. It's an act of radical trust.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Radical trust. Okay, so instead of getting all stressed out about the nitty-gritty of budgeting, it's about shifting our mindset.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine approaching every financial decision with the peace that comes from knowing God's ultimately in control. I mean, we still need to plan and budget, but it changes the whole emotional energy around money.
Less fear, more faith.
Yeah, less fear and control, more about faithful planning and trust.
I can see how that would take a lot of pressure off, especially for couples who, tend to bump heads over spending.
Oh, absolutely. And this ties into another point this source really emphasizes: transparency.
Transparency.
Yeah, real open communication about money. It's not just about having a joint bank account. It's about talking about your spending habits.
Mm.
Even those little purchases can sometimes cause disagreements.
That reminds me of something in this source. The author talked about how they used to struggle with emotional spending. So, to combat that, they made a pact with their spouse. They agreed to talk to each other before any purchase.
Any purchase at all.
Yeah, even like a cup of coffee. It sounds a little extreme, but
I think it's more about respect and consideration. It's about recognizing that, hey, we're in this together. Even small decisions affect our shared financial goals.
it's like that verse, Proverbs 21.5. "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." Diligence in communication and planning together, that's what builds that abundance financially, A and D in the relationship.
That's a great connection. And speaking of abundance, another big topic these sources grapple with is contentment.
Contentment. That's a tough one. It's so easy to get caught up in wanting more, bigger, better, you know.
It's the comparison game, and it never ends.
But these sources really challenge us to think about enough. Like, what does that even mean?
Right. They bring up Ecclesiastes 5.10, which says, "Whoever loves money never has enough." Such a simple statement, but man, it's so true.
It's like trying to fill a bottomless pit. No matter how much you have, it's never enough. I love how one of the sources told that story about the widow in 2 Kings 4. She had next to nothing, but she trusted God.
The widow who used what little oil she had, and God miraculously multiplied it.
That's the one. It's like a powerful reminder to be content with what we have and trust God to provide.
To ask ourselves, what is our enough? Are we chasing after more, or are we finding contentment in the present?
That's a great question to ponder. And speaking of tough topics, these sources don't shy away from another big one: debt.
Ah, yes, debt. It's a word that can strike fear into the hearts of any couple.
Right. But these sources don't just tell us don't go into debt. They go deeper into the practical stuff, strategies, unexpected approaches.
One of the sources uses Romans 13.8 as a starting point. It talks about owing nothing but love. Of course, this doesn't mean all debt is automatically bad, right? But it makes us stop and think. Are our financial commitments aligned with our values and our goals?
So it's about being intentional, making sure debt serves us, not the other way around.
Exactly. And for couples who are already in debt, this source suggests something pretty surprising: separate bank accounts, but with a radical transparency.
Wait, separate accounts? Isn't that kind of counterintuitive to the whole one flesh idea of marriage?
It's not about secrecy or division. It's about giving each partner ownership of their spending. But the key is that radical transparency. It builds trust and accountability.
So no more hiding those impulse purchases, huh?
It's about fostering responsible spending habits individually while working towards those shared financial goals as a team.
Okay, I can see how that could work.
Good.
But how do couples actually start digging themselves out of debt? I mean, where do they even begin?
The source talks about a couple of interesting methods: the debt snowball and the debt avalanche. Have you heard of those?
I've heard the terms, but to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what they mean. Can you break it down for us?
Sure. Imagine you have several debts. Student loans, credit cards, maybe a car loan. With the debt snowball, you focus on paying off the smallest debt first, no matter the interest rate. It's about building momentum.
Ah, so like a snowball rolling downhill, getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Once you knock out that first small debt, you roll that payment amount into the next smallest debt, and so on.
Okay, I get the snowball analogy. It's about those small wins, keeping you motivated to tackle those bigger debts.
Now, the debt avalanche method, it's a little more strategic. You tackle the debt with the highest interest rate first, regardless of the balance. This saves you money in the long run because you're minimizing the amount of interest you're paying.
So snowball for motivation, avalanche for efficiency. Got it. But it's not all doom and gloom when we talk about finances, right?
Yeah.
There's this whole section in one of the sources about generosity.
Absolutely. And it's not just about throwing money at every cause you come across. It's about cultivating a generous heart as a couple. Remember that stewardship mindset. Everything we have is a gift from God, and we're called to be generous with what we've been given.
Like it says in Acts 20.35, it is more blessed to give than to receive.
Exactly. One suggestion I found really practical was this idea of budgeting for giving.
Budgeting for giving. Like, how would that work?
It's simple, really. Just like you budget for groceries or rent, you intentionally set aside a portion of your income specifically for giving. It makes generosity a priority, not an afterthought.
I love that. It's about being intentional with our giving.
And it doesn't always have to be about writing checks. Maybe it's volunteering your time, helping a family in need, or supporting a cause you're both passionate about. There are so many ways to be generous.
And remember Proverbs 11.25. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself.
It's not about depleting ourselves. It's about creating a cycle of blessing. When we give generously, we're blessed in return.
This is giving me so much to think about.
Me too. And you know, we've only just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to uncover as we continue this deep dive. You know, one thing I've noticed is how these sources emphasize unity in a marriage, especially when it comes to finances.
It's not just about, like, avoiding arguments about money. It's about something way deeper.
Right. It's about reflecting a spiritual truth.
One of the sources put it this way. They said, when a couple manages their money well, it shows the world that they're truly one flesh. Like they're really living out the biblical idea of marriage.
And they even brought up that verse from 1 Peter 3.7 about husbands needing to live with their wives in an understanding way, honoring them as fellow heirs of the grace of life.
Wow. I never really thought about that verse in relation to finances before.
Me neither. It really makes you realize that if you're not honoring each other in how you handle money, it could cause problems in your marriage.
Yeah, it could create a crack in the foundation.
Exactly. And this source argues that financial unity isn't about one person taking control. It's about both partners using their strengths and working together as a team.
So, like, how do we actually DO that? I mean, the sources talk about setting aside time for money talks, but honestly, sometimes those conversations can feel more like walking into a minefield.
Well, that's why the how is just as important as the why. One of the sources had a really interesting suggestion. They said instead of always focusing on bills and budgets, start by celebrating your financial wins together, even small ones.
You mean like finally paying off a credit card or managing to stick to our grocery budget for a whole month?
Exactly. Little victories, it kind of shifts the energy, you know? Instead of negativity and blame, it's about encouragement and teamwork.
I like that. It's like you're reminding yourselves that you're on the same team, working towards the same goal. But one thing that keeps popping up in these sources is the importance of financial literacy, especially for women.
Yes, this is so important. For so long, it was assumed that finances were the husband's responsibility. But these sources challenge that idea. They want women to feel empowered, to be knowledgeable about finances.
I love that. Breaking down those old stereotypes. Both partners should be able to make informed decisions about money.
It's not just about knowing how to balance a checkbook anymore. It's about understanding investments, retirement planning, even things like negotiating a salary or starting a side hustle.
Wow. That's a lot to think about.
It is, but there are lots of resources available. Like some sources mention taking financial literacy courses, reading books on personal finance, or finding a mentor.
It's about building confidence and knowledge. Okay, so let's switch gears for a minute and talk about this theme that keeps weaving its way through all these sources. Contentment.
Contentment, yeah, it's more than just being happy with what you have, right? It's deeper than that.
But like a heart attitude, not always wanting more, more, more.
Right. One source connected this to Philippians 4.11-13, where Paul talks about learning to be content in any and all circumstances. It's about finding your true satisfaction in Christ, not in your possessions.
That's so important to remember, especially in today's world where you're constantly bombarded with ads telling you to buy more stuff. It's exhausting.
Totally. These sources really challenge us to look at our hearts and ask, what are we really searching for? Where do we find our security? Are we trying to build our lives on stuff that can disappear in a second? Or are we building on something solid?
One source used this really cool analogy about building a house. They said, if you build your life on a foundation of more, 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 you're basically building on sand. Sooner or later, the storms of life are going to come and wash that foundation away.
Oh, I like that. It's a powerful image.
Right. And they went on to say, but if you build on a foundation of contentment and gratitude and trust in God, well, that's a house that can withstand any storm.
Okay, so how do we actually build that kind of contentment? How do we make it practical?
Well, these sources have some good ideas. One simple but powerful suggestion is practicing gratitude, like really taking time to appreciate what you already have.
Focusing on what you have instead of what you lack. It's a shift in perspective.
Exactly. And another idea, prioritizing experiences over material things.
Yeah, like think about it. What brings more lasting joy? A new outfit that will be out of style in a few months, or a memorable trip with your family.
Memories over things, I like that.
And don't forget about simplifying your lifestyle, getting rid of clutter, both physical and mental. The less you're weighed down by stuff, the freer you are to focus on what truly matters.
Now, here's a surprising thought. One source actually said that generosity can lead to contentment.
Really? That's interesting. How so?
It might seem counterintuitive, but when you're focused on helping others, you're not as focused on your own wants and desires. It takes the focus off yourself.
It's like that saying, there's more happiness in giving than in receiving.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to another topic that can be a bit tricky for couples. Debt. Now, the sources we're looking at, they don't say all debt is bad, but they definitely encourage us to be wise about it.
They highlight Proverbs 22.7. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. So while debt can sometimes be a helpful tool, it can also become a burden if you're not careful.
And let's be real, debt can cause a lot of tension in a marriage.
Yeah.
It can lead to arguments, resentment, even feelings of shame.
Absolutely. But the good news is that these sources offer some really practical tips for handling debt, whether you're trying to avoid it altogether or you're working to get out of it.
Like what? I'm all ears.
Well, it starts with the basics. Creating a budget, tracking your expenses, and trying to live below your means.
Solid advice, but not always easy to put into practice, you know?
I hear you. And that's why the sources also talk about resisting those spending temptations we all face. One idea I found helpful was the concept of a spending fast. It's like a cleanse for your finances.
A spending fast. I've never heard of that.
Basically, you commit to a certain period of time, maybe a week or a month, where you only spend money on essential things.
Oh, interesting. That would really help you break those bad spending habits.
And another important thing, having an emergency fund. It's like a safety net that can prevent you from going into debt when unexpected things happen, like car repairs or medical bills.
That's a good point. Having that financial cushion can really reduce stress. But what about couples who are already in debt? How do they even start tackling that?
Well, the sources suggest seeking professional financial counseling if needed and creating a detailed debt repayment plan. And they also talk about different debt payoff strategies.
Okay, like what? Give me the details.
We talked about the debt snowball and debt avalanche methods earlier, but there are other things like debt consolidation or balance transfer offers that can help you save money on interest.
Yeah.
The key is to find the approach that works best for your unique situation.
So it's not one size fits all. It's about being proactive and finding a strategy that aligns with your financial goals. But it's not all about paying off debt and scrimping and saving, right? These sources also talk about financial freedom and what that looks like.
Right. And it's not just about being debt-free. It's about having the resources and peace of mind to live a generous life and make a difference in the world.
So it's about getting to a place where you can use your money to bless others.
Exactly. It's about aligning your finances with your values and using your resources for good. Maybe that means supporting a ministry, funding a scholarship, or investing in businesses that are making a positive impact.
It's about using your money for more than just your own comfort. This is really making me think.
Me too. And honestly, we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to unpack as we go deeper into these sources.
As we're wrapping up this deep dive, I keep thinking about the idea of intentionality. Like, it's not enough to just hope for the best when it comes to finances.
Right. It's about making choices that reflect our values as Christian couples.
One source made a comparison to tending a garden. They said, managing money is a lot like tending a garden. It needs constant care, attention, and you have to be willing to adapt.
I like that analogy. It's so true. You can't just plant a garden and expect it to thrive on its own, right? You have to put in the work.
Exactly. Sometimes that means getting your hands dirty, making tough choices.
And just like a garden has different seasons, our finances do too. There will be times when things are good and times when things are tight.
The key is to be prepared for those different seasons. One of the sources suggested having a financial plan, like a short-term plan, a mid-term plan, A&D, a long-term plan.
It's like having a roadmap for your money. You know where you are and where you want to go.
Exactly. And it's important to set those goals as a couple, whether it's saving for a house, paying off debt, planning for retirement, or even dreaming about starting a ministry.
It's about having a shared vision. And remember, it shouldn't feel like a dictatorship.
Right. It should be a conversation where both partners feel heard. And let's be honest, even the best couples are going to have disagreements about money sometimes. It's just part of life.
Yeah, those disagreements are bound to happen. But these sources have some great advice for handling them in a healthy way.
Okay, like what? Give us the secrets.
Well, it starts with communication. Really listening to your partner's perspective, even if you don't see eye to eye.
And being able to communicate your needs and concerns in a respectful way.
Right. And sometimes, if things get too heated, it's okay to take a break.
A timeout. I like that idea.
Yeah. Walk away for a bit, cool down, pray about it, and come back to the conversation when you're both feeling calmer.
That's so wise.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about managing money day to day, but these sources also got me thinking about legacy. Like, what do we want to leave behind?
It's a big question. It's not just about managing money for ourselves. It's about making choices that will affect future generations.
One source talked about the importance of teaching our kids about finances.
It's about more than just teaching them the practical stuff, like how to balance a checkbook or open a bank account.
It's about teaching them the values behind it. Stewardship, generosity, contentment.
Exactly. And one source even suggested getting kids involved in financial decisions from a young age, obviously in an age-appropriate way.
Like maybe giving them an allowance and showing them how to budget it, or involving them in conversations about giving or saving for a family goal.
It's about normalizing finances, not making it a taboo topic. But our legacy isn't just about our kids, right? It's bigger than that.
That's right. These sources challenged us to think about how we can use our resources to make a difference in the world. Maybe it's through supporting missions, funding scholarships, or investing in ethical businesses.
It's about using our money for good, not just for our own comfort or security.
I love that. This whole conversation has really opened my eyes to what it means to be a faithful steward.
Me too. And as we wrap up, I keep coming back to the idea of gratitude. No matter what our financial situation looks like, we always have something to be thankful for.
One source put it beautifully. They said, gratitude is the key that unlocks contentment. When we focus on what we have instead of what we lack, it changes everything.
It really does. Gratitude isn't just a feeling, it's a decision, a choice we make every single day. It's about noticing those blessings in our lives, the big ones and the small ones.
And the more we practice gratitude, the more we realize we have everything we truly need. That doesn't mean we can't have goals and dreams, but it means recognizing that God is faithful and He'll provide for us.
So as you continue on this journey of managing your finances, remember, it's not just about the numbers. It's about reflecting God's character in your financial decisions.
It's about building a legacy of faithfulness, generosity, and gratitude, and doing it together as a couple.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope you've been inspired and challenged to think differently about money. And remember, even small changes can make a big difference over time.
Until next time, may your finances be a blessing to you and to others.